He found her shivering by the old depot, shared his coat, and found his missing piece, Wyoming Territory. November, 1884. The cold hit like a slap when Ethan Callahan stepped off his horse near the old freight depot outside of Coldwater. Snow flurried sideways, driven by wind that bit through his gloves. He pulled his duster tighter, boots crunching on the frozen ground as he approached the sagging structure. He would have ridden straight into town if not for the movement he'd caught out the corner of his eye, a figure tucked up against the depot wall, motionless, barely more than a shadow. He squinted, heart thudding harder as he got closer. It was a woman. Her coat was thin and worn, sleeves too short, her arms hugged tight around her knees. Straw-blonde hair stuck to her cheeks and her lips were blue. She looked up, startled, eyes wide. For a second, she didn't say a word. Then she shrank back like she thought he might hit her. "Hey," Ethan said gently, dropping to a knee. "I'm not going to hurt you." Her teeth chattered. "You're freezing," he said, already shrugging out of his coat. He wrapped it around her before she could argue. "Come on. There's a fire in my cabin not 2 miles from here. You can warm up." She stared at him like she was trying to figure out if he was lying. "I swear, I'm Ethan Callahan. I live alone. You'll be safe." She swallowed hard. "Hannah?" He nodded. "Can you walk, Hannah?" She tried to stand, knees buckling. Ethan caught her before she hit the ground. "That's all right," he said, lifting her into his arms. "I've got you." His cabin was small but warm, tucked in a pocket of trees near the river. He got the fire roaring, then brought her a thick blanket, a basin of water, and a tin cup of hot coffee. Hannah sat close to the stove, Ethan's coat still wrapped around her. Her cheeks were pinking up now, and she looked more alive than she had by the depot. But there was something guarded in her eyes. She kept glancing toward the door, like she was waiting for someone, or maybe running from someone. He crouched beside her, not too close. "You hungry?" She hesitated. "Yes, thank you." He handed her a plate of beans and cornbread. She ate like she hadn't touched food in days. When she finished, she set the plate down carefully. "I did not mean to trespass, I had nowhere else to go." Ethan sat back on his heels. "You do now." Her eyes met his, and she blinked hard. "You don't even know me." "No," he said. "But I know what it looks like when someone's been through hell. I know what cold does to a person, and I know you didn't end up by that depot because everything in your life was going fine." She looked away at that, lips pressed tight. "You don't have to tell me anything," he added. "Not unless you want to." Hannah was quiet a long time, eyes on the flames. Then she whispered, "I had 2 children, a boy and a girl, Emily and Aaron. We were headed west. My husband died in Kansas. Fever." Ethan's chest tightened. "We made it to Miles City," she said. "I thought we were safe, but I trusted the wrong man. He said he would help us, a traitor. Instead, he took my children, sold them like they were nothing." Ethan's fists curled. "You remember his name?" "Wade Thompson." He exhaled slow, jaw tight. "I know that name. He moves between Miles and Bismarck, deals in horses, and worse." She nodded. "I've been walking for days, following his trail, but I lost him." Ethan stood, grabbed his rifle from the wall. "Then we'll find him." She looked up, startled. "Why would you help me?" "Because you're a mother," he said, "and because no one deserves what happened to you." Tears filled her eyes. She wiped them away fast like she was ashamed. "You rest tonight," Ethan said. "Get warm. Tomorrow we ride." The next morning, Hannah stood near his horse, wrapped in a wool scarf he handed her. Her chin was lifted, and though her hands trembled, there was steel behind her eyes. "You sure?" Ethan asked. She nodded. "They are out there, and I will not stop until I hold them again." He gave her a small smile, the first in days. "Then let's bring them home." They rode west, snow crunching under hoof. The wind was sharp, but Ethan kept glancing at her, how she leaned into the saddle, how her hands gripped the reins, steady now. She was strong, more than he had expected. That night, they camped under the stars, fire crackling low. Hannah sat close beside him, sipping from the coffee tin. Her head rested near his shoulder, and he let it stay there. She was quiet but not tense anymore. She trusted him. The thought settled something deep in his chest. "You saved my life," she said softly. He looked at her. "You saved your own. I just showed up." She smiled faintly. "Still, You found me. He nodded, shivering by that depot, like I was meant to. She looked at him, eyes full of something he couldn't quite name yet, but it warmed him deeper than the fire ever could. And when she leaned her head against him again, he let his arm go around her shoulder. Neither of them said a word after that, but they both felt it. Something had shifted. The wind eased the further they rode from the river, the land opening into wide grassland speckled with frozen brush and fence lines gone slack in the cold. By late morning, they passed a saw-roofed homestead, with no smoke rising from the chimney. Ethan slowed his horse. "Place has been empty a while," he said, scanning the shuttered windows. Hannah kept her eyes forward. Could someone like Wade Thompson hole up in a place like that? Maybe. But he's clever enough to keep moving. Most likely he's got deals lined up between the Missouri and the Yellowstone. He won't stay still long. She shifted in the saddle. Then, we'll ride longer. They did, covering more ground than Ethan would have planned with anyone else. But Hannah didn't complain. Her movements were stiff but steady. She didn't ask to stop, not even when the sun dipped low and the air turned brittle again. They made camp above a dry creek, the sky bruising with dusk. Ethan gathered kindling while Hannah unpacked the last of the venison. When he returned, she was crouched near a rock, rubbing her hands fast. "You'll crack your skin that way," he said, kneeling beside her. "Hold them over the fire once it's going." She blinked, then nodded. "I forget sometimes. What's safe and what's not." He struck the flint, coaxing flame to life. The light flickered across her face, and he saw her watching him quietly, without pressing. "You live out here by choice?" she asked. "Left Virginia after the war," he said, feeding a larger branch into the fire. "Too much ash behind me. I came west looking for something I didn't have a name for." Her head tilted. "Did you find it?" He met her eyes. "I might have." She looked back at the flames, lips parting as if she might say more, but then she set the pan over the fire instead. They ate in silence until the stars came out. The quiet didn't feel strained, just full. Ethan leaned back against his saddle, arms crossed. What were Emily and Aaron like? She didn't. Emily talks in her sleep. She hums little tunes she makes up. Aaron likes numbers. He counts everything. Buttons, birds, fence posts. Ethan smiled without thinking. Sounds like they got their mother's grit. Hannah rubbed her thumb over the edge of the tin cup. "I braided her hair the morning we left Miles City. She wanted red ribbons. I only had brown." Ethan didn't speak. He knew better than to fill silence that mattered. After a while, she shifted closer, her shoulder brushing his. He didn't move away. "You said you came west for something you couldn't name," she said. "Maybe it was this, helping someone." He turned his head toward her. "I think it was you." Her breath caught faintly. "You don't know everything about me. I don't need to. I know what I've seen." She looked at him full then, not flinching away. Her hand rested near his on the blanket, fingers pale but steady. "Will you stay with me?" she asked. "I'm not going anywhere, Hannah." She nodded slowly, then leaned her head against his chest. He wrapped his arm around her, holding her like something precious. She didn't tremble. The fire popped, wind whispering through brittle grass. Above them, the stars burned sharp and cold, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt like the ground beneath him wasn't shifting, like he'd stopped running without realizing he ever had. By the fifth day, the trail grew clearer. They reached a roadhouse south of Glendive just before dusk, where the innkeeper, a stooped man with a long scar down his jaw, mentioned a traitor passing through 2 days earlier with 2 children. Said he paid in gold and left before dawn, heading toward Fort Union. "Girl had red string in her braid," the man added. "Boy was quiet, wouldn't touch his food." Ethan watched Hannah's fingers press hard into the edge of the counter. She didn't speak until they were outside again, the wind lifting her hair as they walked back to the horses. "They're close," she whispered. Ethan nodded once. "We'll push through the hills tomorrow." He'll cut through the timber to avoid open roads. That night they camped near the edge of a frozen slough, the wind muffled by cottonwoods. Ethan kept the fire low and his rifle within arm's reach beside him. Hannah sat with her knees drawn up, staring into the dark beyond the firelight. "I used to make up stories for them," she said quietly. "Emily liked ones about foxes. Aaron always wanted numbers in his tales. I'd say the fox had 12 apples or 27 buttons on his coat." Ethan glanced at her, then back to the shadows. "You'll tell them more when we get them back." Her voice dropped. I have to believe that. You don't have to, he said. Just keep riding. She looked toward him then, her breath visible between them. You ever think of having a family? He didn't answer right away. I used to, before the war. Then afterward I figured it wasn't in me. She didn't press, just waited. He tossed a stick into the fire. But now I don't know. Feels different with you here. Hannah reached for his hand, her fingers cold but sure. We're different people than we were before. He turned his palm up, lacing their fingers together. I like who I am with you. She didn't speak again, just leaned gently into his side, the lean quieter than any promise. By morning, a snow haze had settled low over the hills. They rode without speaking, the horse's breath steaming in the cold. Ethan kept his eyes on the faint tracks that veered west into thicker woods. By midday, the trees thinned again, revealing a narrow shack near a creek bend. A tethered wagon sat out front, its wheels dusted in frost. Ethan dismounted and motioned for Hannah to stay behind the trees. She didn't argue. He approached slowly, rifle lowered, but ready. The door creaked when he pushed it open. Inside, the air stank of unwashed bodies and dried blood. A man sat at the table, head slumped forward, reeking of whiskey. Ethan stepped inside, silent as a shadow, and kicked the man's boot. Wade Thompson groaned, then looked up, blinking blurrily. Who the hell? Ethan cocked the rifle. Where are the children? Thompson's face twisted. Don't know what. Ethan struck him hard across the jaw with the butt of the rifle. Try again. Thompson spat blood. Traded them to a freighter named Langley. He was heading to Fort Buford. Ethan's voice was low. You sold them like cattle. Thompson's lip curled. Wasn't your business. Ethan's hand tightened on the rifle. For a breath, the only sound was the wind outside. Then a soft voice behind him. Let me see him. She stood in the doorway, her face pale but steady. Ethan stepped aside. Thompson looked at her and laughed, slow and mean. You still breathing? Thought you'd be dead in a ditch by now. Hannah walked forward until she stood over him. You'll never hurt another child again. Thompson opened his mouth, but Ethan struck him again, knocking him unconscious. They tied him to a post, left him with a flask of water and a message carved into the table for the lawmen in Glendive. Ethan took the wagon. Hannah climbed up beside him. They rode hard toward Fort Buford. That night, they made camp in the shelter of a rocky ridge. Ethan built the fire higher than before. Neither of them wanted the dark pressing too close. As they sat wrapped in blankets, Hannah turned to him. When this is over, she said, what will you do? He looked at her, the firelight catching in her hair. I'll go where you go. She reached up, touched his cheek. And if I want to stay? I'll build you a house, he said, with a room for each of them, and one for us. Her eyes filled, not with grief this time, but something softer. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was a quiet kiss, but certain. When it ended, she rested her forehead against his. I never thought I'd find someone strong enough to carry what I carry. You're not alone anymore, he said. You never will be again. She smiled then, small and fierce. Then let's bring them home. The Missouri lay flat and grey beneath a curtain of low clouds as they neared Fort Buford. The wind had softened, but the cold ran deeper now, the kind that settled in joints and stayed there. Ethan guided the wagon along the rutted track, his gloved hands steady on the reins. Hannah sat close beside him, her face drawn with focus, not fear. They passed a line of supply wagons at the edge of the post. Soldiers eyed them, but no one stopped them. Ethan pulled the wagon to a halt near the stables and nodded toward the barracks. Langley'll be inside or nearby. He wouldn't risk traveling farther until the weather breaks. Hannah climbed down without hesitation. Then we don't wait. Inside the main building, the air was thick with damp wool and pipe smoke. A fire burned low in a central hearth. Men gathered in small knots, some playing cards, others hunched over plates of stew. Ethan scanned the room once, then again. A man near the back caught his eye, tall, with a stained buffalo hide coat and a crooked stance. A rifle leaned against his leg. That's him, Ethan murmured. Hannah didn't hesitate. She crossed the floor, her footsteps silent on the worn planks. You're Langley, she said. The man looked up, eyes narrowing. Who's asking? I am, she said. Where are they? Langley blinked, confused for a beat, then leaned back. Ah, Thompson's freight. Thought you was dead. Ethan stepped beside her. rifle angled low but ready. "They're not your concern anymore." Langley shrugged. "Didn't touch him. Took them off Thompson's hands to keep the peace. They're in the back room, safe. Don't bark at me. I'm not the villain here." Hannah pushed past, disappearing through a side door. Ethan kept his eyes on Langley until he heard a sound from behind. It was a cry, not one of pain, but of recognition. Then Hannah's voice, cracked and shaking. "Emily! Aaron!" He stepped back as the door opened. She stood there with both children pressed against her sides. Emily's braid was half undone, her ribbon faded, but her eyes were clear and fixed on her mother. Aaron clung to Hannah's coat with silent intensity. Langley scratched his beard. "Told you. Didn't harm a hair." Ethan looked at him evenly. "You'll stay out of Montana, out of Dakota, out of anywhere I ride." Langley raised his hands. "Fine by me." Outside, snow had started again, light and dry. Ethan lifted Aaron into the wagon while Hannah helped Emily up. She climbed in after them, wrapping them both in the extra buffalo robe she'd packed days ago. Ethan tied down the last strap and climbed into the driver's seat. As they turned south along the river, the children leaned into their mother, quiet but present. Ethan didn't speak until they had cleared the ridge and left the fort behind. "You did it." Hannah looked at him, her eyes clearer than he'd seen them yet. "We did." The wagon creaked and shifted beneath them, wheels catching in frost-rutted mud. The sun broke through the clouds, just barely, casting a pale light over the prairie. Ethan glanced down at her hand, resting on the seat between them. He reached over and took it. She didn't pull away. "I think," she said after a long while, "I'm ready to plant something, to stay in one place, maybe near those hills you showed me, the ones with the aspen grove." Ethan squeezed her hand. "I'll build there, a real house, with a porch and a root cellar, and fence posts so straight they'll make the wind jealous." Emily looked up at them, then leaned her head against her mother's arm. Hannah smiled, not wide, but deep. "And you?" she asked. Ethan looked out over the land, then back at her. "I've already got what I was missing." They didn't speak again for miles, but something had settled between them. Not just peace, not just warmth. Belonging. The kind that didn't need words to hold fast. The kind that lasted. The wind had quieted by the time they passed back through cold water. The town seemed smaller than Ethan remembered, or maybe just quieter, now that his mind wasn't so fixed on the road ahead. He stopped the wagon by the mercantile, helped Hannah and the children down, and waited as she took cautious steps up the wooden porch. Inside, the clerk blinked at the four of them like he wasn't sure they were real. Ethan paid him no mind. Hannah picked out bolts of calico, a kettle, socks for Emily and Aaron, and a tin box of sewing needles. She didn't hesitate. Everything she touched with purpose. Ethan watched her choose a flannel work shirt, then glance up at him. "You'll need another one," she said. He nodded. "You're right." When they left, the children carried small satchels of hard candy and a book each. Aaron had already started counting the pages in his, whispering the numbers under his breath. Emily held hers close to her chest, her red ribbon finally replaced with a blue one Hannah had tied in the wagon. They stayed that night in the loft above the stable, the inn-rooms all taken by traveling surveyors. Ethan laid out blankets by the hay and helped Aaron settle into the crook by the wall. Emily curled beside her mother, already half asleep. When Ethan turned to leave them privacy, Hannah reached for his hand. "You don't have to sleep alone," she said. He hesitated, just a breath, before spreading his blanket beside hers. The lantern burned low. Between the soft rustle of the horses below and the wind in the rafters, Ethan heard Hannah whisper, "I want to marry you." His breath caught. She didn't look away. "I've lived through too much to wait on things worth having," she said. "If you feel the same, then we'll do it right. Not someday, now." He reached for her hand under the blanket. "I do feel the same." She smiled, and this one reached all the way to her eyes. They were married 2 days later, just outside Coldwater, under a stand of leafless cottonwoods. The ground was frozen, but the sky was clear. The preacher wore mittens beneath his robes, and Emily held her mother's gloves while Aaron clutched the ring Ethan had carved from a deer antler. It wasn't much, but Hannah's fingers didn't tremble as she slipped it on. Afterward, they rode out to the land Ethan had once found when he first came west, a gentle rise above the river, with a line of aspens at its back, and a wide stretch of prairie falling away in front. He had always meant to build there, but he'd never known for who. They pitched a canvas tent for the first days, and Ethan dug the foundation with his own hands. Hannah kept the fire up while the children gathered kindling and helped tamp the earth. Aaron found a rusted horseshoe in the grass, and Ethan nailed it above the tent flap for luck. By spring, the house was standing. 2 rooms, a sod roof layered with timber, and a porch that faced the sunset. Ethan built the kitchen table from pine he felled himself, and Hannah stitched curtains from the fabric she'd chosen that day in cold water. Emily planted sweet peas beneath the window, and Aaron kept a tally of their growth on a scrap of paper nailed to the porch post. One evening in May, Ethan finished mending the fence along the south end of the homestead and found Hannah sitting on the porch steps, a bowl of peas in her lap, the children playing in the tall grass beyond. She looked up when he joined her, and her smile was quiet but full. "I like it here," she said. "It's not what I pictured when I left Miles City, but it's better." He sat beside her, brushing a bit of sawdust from his sleeve. "It feels like it was always meant to be this way. Us here, together." She leaned against his shoulder, and they watched the children chase each other through the grass. Aaron laughing louder than Ethan had ever heard, Emily's braid flying behind her in the wind. Hannah reached for his hand. "I want more children. When we're ready." He kissed her forehead, lingering there. "We'll have as many as we're given." That night, after the children had fallen asleep under the quilt Hannah had pieced together from scraps of old shirts and flour sacks, Ethan and Hannah lay in the dark, the window cracked to let in the night air. "You think they remember what came before?" she asked. "Maybe, but they'll carry this more." She turned to face him, her fingers finding his. "You gave me a life I didn't dare hope for." "No," he said, brushing her cheek. "You made it with your own hands. I just held the door open." She kissed him then, slow and sure, and he kissed her back, his hand resting over her heart. The wind outside moved through the aspens like a hush, not cold, not harsh, just the sound of peace settling in. And in the house they built with their own labor, beneath a roof they'd raised, and a sky wide enough to carry every kind of sorrow and joy. They fell asleep, wrapped in each other's warmth, the fire still glowing low in the hearth.